Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Mikey's Life Adventure. This episode is called Why Wolverine? And that's a good question. Why Wolverine? Now, I'm not going to make any bones about it. I'm a Cyclops fan. And like a lot of people out there, if you're a Cyclops fan, you're not a Wolverine fan. And if you're a Wolverine fan, you're not a Cyclops fan. And why is this? Well, some think because of the love triangle thing. But I think it's just because of differential in who they are personally. Now, you're probably wondering why I don't like Wolverine. Well, it's simple. Wolverine ruined comics. Yeah, let me go in depth and let you know Wolverine ruined comics. You see, as a comic book geek, which I can honestly say I am, comics held a special place for me, especially the X-Men, because someone who felt like an outsider, to have people who were outsiders themselves and still doing the right thing made me say, you know what? I like these guys. And then came along Wolverine. Now, don't get me wrong, Wolverine has his personality, but it's not what they turned it into. When you first meet Wolverine, he's kind of a laid-back, relaxing guy. Matter of fact, in one of the comic books, him and Nightcrawler go out for beers, and someone calls him Logan. And Nightcrawler's like, "Why are they calling you Logan?" And Wolverine's like, "Well, nobody's asked me my name, and that's my name." And it was very had humor. And then came along other things. And those other things are what ruined comics. He became popular. He became very popular. And part of it was for his catchphrase, "I'm the best at what I do, and what I do isn't very nice." So you're a tough guy that likes to kill people, which led him down the anti-hero path. And because of this more dark nature, more brooding personality, other comics started to change. The Punisher went back to his dirtier roots in Marvel. Batman became the Dark Knight again. And then more and more comic book writers started writing these anti-heroes. And then eventually when the Marvel writers and artists left Marvel to start Image, they were all dark characters. This is all traced back to Wolverine and his dark loner approach. I gotta do what I gotta do because I'm the loner. But because he was making the company money, the loner wasn't so much a loner. Since he was guest starring in Fantastic Four, he was in The Amazing Spider-Man, he was in whatever comic they could nail him down to be the guest star. Because they wanted to make money. And I don't blame them for that. They're in the business of making money. But then this started pressuring Chris Claremont, one of the best comic book writers ever. And one of the things they ended up having to do was a crossover. The first one, The Mutant Massacre, came around kind of naturally because of the way his storytelling was. But it was so successful. They decided, you know what? We're going to make you do this every year. And for a couple of years it worked, but when you have to start forcing your stories a certain way, that's what happens. And one of the focal points of these stories was Wolverine. Now, one of the most natural stories is the Dark Phoenix saga. And this is long before the crossover events that I was just talking about. And this is where my true hatred for Wolverine started. You see, he is the focal point of the Dark Phoenix in people's minds because of the Fox movies. But he's not. He's a bit player. He's a side player. Because in the comics, him and Cyclops really aren't that far apart in a lot of things. Matter of fact, they're best friends. In the comics, he even calls him Slim. Wolverine, because that's the kind of guy he was, gives people nicknames. Because he's laid back, he's relaxed, he's comfortable. And in the Dark Phoenix saga, it's not Wolverine who saves Jean, or ends Jean, or however you want to put it. It's Cyclops, and it's his love for her. His love for Jean makes the Phoenix entity realize, you know what? I need to sacrifice myself. And that's where the Fox movies went wrong. They hitched their damn wagon to Wolverine. All the movies were about Wolverine. And that's why I was so angry as a comic book fan to walk out of X-Men The Last Stand. Why? I sat through two movies that focused on Wolverine. And finally, Cyclops was going to get his just due. You were going to see him for the hero that he was, the leader, the brave person, the person who judged himself just as harshly as everybody else, but still stood up for mutant kind. Because that's what he was trained to do. He was a real leader, not a damn loner. A loner who was in every other comic. And you know what? They kill him off in the first 20 damn minutes. And then, almost word for word, they take his lines and give them to Wolverine. Which is bullshit. Because Wolverine would have never made that play. The only reason he was attracted to Jean to begin with was her dangerous side. And she was attracted to his dangerous side, but it was because of the Phoenix ending. The real Jean had eyes for one person, and every time, because she's died a few times, she comes back, the first person her eyes are for are Scott Summers, Cyclops. They're meant to be together. It's one of those universal truths. So, Fox hitched their wagon to him, and what they got was a bunch of bad movies. The first one was okay. The Days of Future Past was done really, really well, and I did enjoy that. So I'm hoping the MCU does not make that same mistake. Now, in the movies, don't get me wrong, Hugh Jackman did a fantastic job as Wolverine. Other than the fact that he's a foot and a half taller than Wolverine is supposed to be. There's no thick Canadian accent, which they point out in the comics all the time. But other than that, he did a fantastic job. So, when it comes to the MCU, they cannot make the mistake. They cannot make the mistake of putting Wolverine as the focal point. They're going to. Why? Because they can make money off of it. And how do I know they're going to? Because they're already doing it with Deadpool 3. Now, I was never a huge Deadpool fan, but with what Ryan Reynolds has done with the first two, I was looking forward to the third one. No, not so much. Why? Because Wolverine. You don't need Wolverine. They need Wolverine because they want to make money. And I totally get this. But Wolverine is not that in-depth of a character. He's really not. He was starting to be flushed out, again, by Chris Claremont. But, again, because they wanted to make money, they passed him off to other writers. They changed his whole background. They disillusioned him, is in my opinion. So, when the MCU does bring in the X-Men, which is going to be coming, it's got to be the original six. It has to be an origin story. It has to be the original six. It has to be Cyclops as the leader. It has to be the Beast as the scientist. It has to be Jean Grey as Marvel Girl / the Phoenix. It has to be Iceman. And it has to have Professor X leading them. And that's what you need. And then there's the Angel. Before it becomes the Archangel. Which, again, is a story that can be there. But what makes it the best, the whole thing is, they're young. They're impressionable. But they're different, and they know they're different. That's what made the story so good. So it has to be the original six. They have to do that. But this is about Wolverine. Wolverine needs to have the same... needs to have the understanding that he has to go. That's my opinion. And this is what this page is about. In my opinion, Wolverine is, again, and this might start down another path, Boba Fett. Boba Fett's a bit player. He got a TV series, which is basically Mandalorian 2.4, 2.5, 2.8, whatever you want to call it. Mandalorian season 2.5 because he's a bit character that was cool. Wolverine was cool. I got these claws that pop out, and depending on who was drawing him, they were blades. Sometimes they were stilettos. You didn't know. You didn't know. And then, and it's just it. You take a small character who becomes popular with the less informed. Now, I'm not trying to make anybody mad. I'm not trying to upset anybody. But Wolverine really isn't that good of a character. There's no depth. And every time they try to do depth, they change things. They manipulate things to fit the story they're trying to tell. For the X-Men to really, really work, you need to go back to the beginning. And then, as you introduce new characters, you need to take pieces from Chris Claremont. If you haven't read his comics, his run of X-Men, you don't know what you're missing. And I guarantee you, there are some Wolverine stories in there, but he's not the focal point. Who are the focal point? It's still the original six. And after the original six leave the X-Men title, they get their own title, the X Factor. And then they come back to the original because that's what the people wanted. So why Wolverine? I don't know why Wolverine. Why do I dislike Wolverine? I hopefully posted in, or showed you why. He ruined comics. He was a bad focal point for the Fox movies. He can't be a focal point in the MCU. And basically, he's a bit character. And this is my opinion. And I've had this discussion with people in the past, and they think that I'm just nitpicking. But a hero's supposed to be a hero. And yes, I pointed out Superman's kind of an asshole. But he's still a hero. He's doing what he thinks is right. Cyclops is a reluctant hero. He's doing what is right. Storm, super goddess, uses her power because she wants to do what's right. Logan, Wolverine, whatever you want to call him, he uses his power to do what the hell he wants. And that's not a hero. And what he wants to do is make Marvel money. And this may seem, I don't know, my opinion. Oh, wait, this is my page, so it is my opinion. But Wolverine, we don't need him. We've had enough of him. He's oversaturated us. We've seen enough of him in the movies. We've overseen him in the comics. He's like that guest that comes to your house, says he's going to be there 2 or 3 days, and then it's like a week and a half later, and you're like, when's he going to leave? Well, it's time for Wolverine to pack up his bag and move on. And that's just, well, part of Mikey's adventure. Maybe you could leave some comments. This is on both my YouTube and my podcast. If you're not following one or the other, go ahead. There'll be a link. Go ahead and follow it. And there'll be another quick turnaround. Next week's, I already know what it's going to be, and we'll talk about football. Because we're closing in on Super Bowl Sunday, which is like a religious holiday for me. I hope you take care. I hope you enjoy this. And until next time, be happy, be you, and above all, come listen and see Mikey. Because, well, why not?